Hello, my name is Nomiu and this is my 10-man heroic stoneguard guide in the Mogushon Vaults. This guide will assume you are already familiar with the normal mode mechanics. While the encounter is quite difficult, it is also reasonably accessible for a well-geared and well-coordinated group. The encounter will be easy for your raid to learn as it does not differ greatly from the normal mode version. In heroic mode, the guardians all have greatly increased health. This aspect turns the fight into somewhat of a DPS race, but this is made trivial by the heroic only mechanic of the encounter. In addition to this, every single mechanic in the encounter deals significantly more damage than in normal mode. This includes the melee attacks of the guardians themselves. The new mechanic is the interaction between your raid and the tiles that make up the room, and several crystals that are present in the room. By executing the strategy properly, your raid will benefit from a buff that will greatly increase your DPS and spirit, allowing you to better handle the boss's increased health and damage. In order to obtain this buff, several of your raid members will have to interact with the crystals present around the room and run over specific areas of the floor. For each active guardian, there is a crystal located in the room. These crystals are unattackable and do nothing on their own. When a raid member interacts with the crystal by clicking on it, the raid member gains a debuff. This debuff deals damage to the affected raid member, but it also allows them to buff the raid. The only difference between the crystals is the school of magic damage that they deal. This debuff has 10 stacks, and these stacks are progressively lost. For each stack, the player takes a small amount of damage every second. Even though the damage dealt per stack is rather low, the player will take high damage after having just clicked on the crystal, since the stacks will be at their highest. The next part of the mechanics involves the floor tiles. Whenever a raid member who is affected by a debuff from a crystal walks on a floor tile, this tile becomes energized, and a stack of their debuff is removed. There are two types of floor tiles. White floor tiles are the tiles that make up the floor of the room. This includes the central area, which is a darker color and partly covered with carpet. White floor tiles do not do anything on their own. This is the default state of the room, which is modified by a debuff player stepping on them. Energized tiles, on the other hand, are white floor tiles that have been stepped on by players affected by a debuff from a crystal. Energized tiles glow brightly, and for each one, your raid gains a stack of energized tiles. These tiles increase the damage done in spirit of all your raid members by 1% per stack. The buff has a 10-minute duration. However, all the current energized tiles are reset by the boss when they reach 75 and 40% health. For the most part, it is the task of the DPS players to energize the floor tiles, and the number of DPS players who will go around energizing floor tiles depends on how well your raid can cope with the damage that these players will take from their respective debuffs. But the faster you reach your desired level of energized tiles, the better. It may be possible for healers to help out with energizing tiles, which can be useful. Remember, in order to energize a tile, as I mentioned earlier, all you must do is run over it while under the effects of one of the Guardian's crystals. Aside from energizing the floor tiles, nothing is different from the normal mode of the encounter. Keep in mind, however, that all the mechanics are far more punishing in heroic mode. The key to this fight is your ability to light up those tiles to help with DPS and healer mana regen during the encounter. It's also important to note, while you're running tiles, so you've already gone over, you click the crystal and you're going to go ahead and run tiles. It is not mandatory for you to do this, but it does help as far as damage done to the raid. Whatever Guardian is purifying, it is helpful for you to use that crystal to run tiles. Now, if that's not an option, that's okay. It's not a deal breaker. But if you're on the side and you have Cobalt and Jade is purifying, it's better for you just to grab that Jade, run those tiles. That way you'll take less damage from that dot. So always remember, whatever Guardian is purifying, you're taking 90% less damage from that school of magic. So it's always very, very important to pay attention to what's purifying, see where their energy is at, and go ahead and deal with that mechanic at that time. If you also have a hunter or a paladin in your group and kobolds are getting a little out of control because you've had, for example, let's say you have amethyst, jasper, amethyst, it's been 3 purifications and you have yet to get cobalt, not to worry. If you have a hunter, they can deterrence and pop about 3 mines, and a pally can bubble and also eat those mines and not die from them as well. So immunity effects do work prior to popping that cooldown and going ahead and pop that mine, but it is again very essential that you pop those mines when cobalt is purifying. But from time to time you will get unlucky and you won't get it for quite some time, and the room will begin to fill up and make it a little more difficult, especially if Jasper is up. You're pretty much make it a little more difficult to get connected with Jasper partner that might be for whatever reason across the room. And that will do it for this guide, guys. And again, this fight's all about execution and painting up the room as much as you can. It really helps out the raid, really helps out your healers. Try to mitigate damage as much as possible. Again, Cobalt is purifying, break Cobalt. Jasper is purifying, break those chains. If Jasper is purifying, go ahead and pick up Jasper Crystal and run those tiles just to mitigate as much as possible, make life easier for your healers. And always, I hope this guide was helpful for you guys. I hope this helps you guys accomplish a kill. Thank you again for listening. Please like and subscribe our videos. It really does help us out tremendously. Thank you again, and this is Nomio signing off.